Where?
Israel.
Cool. Where in Palestine are you from?
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. Iran and Libya are racing to develop nuclear weapons.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished. Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs. Iran to produce an arsenal of nuclear weapons. They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be within a few months.
On a night show, 2-bit huckster in a 5-bit suit, Jordan Peterson, spoke to former Israeli Prime Minister and ethnic cleansing Mr. Clean, Naftali Bennett, and it was all the shit show we hoped it would be. Plus, our government is working day and night to shred Medicaid and screw Americans every which way. So I guess you could say they're burning the candle at both ends, to ream us in both ends. God bless our public servants. All that and much more coming up right now. Welcome to Unredacted tonight. I'm the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. As Israel continues its genocide every single day, I thought it might be worth taking a second to delve into the unbelievably brainless offenses of Israel spewed by those who somehow still support Israel. And who better than charlatan professor in a $5,000 wardrobe, Jordan Peterson, and a man without hair, a neck, a soul, balls, or a conscience, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Put on your tall rain boots, kids, because we're going in.
In the U.S., there's been widespread protests, especially on university campuses, but also spilling through the cities. It's a worldwide campaign. First of all, what's your sense of how those campaigns were organized and who's lurking behind the scenes there?
Yes, why would there be a worldwide campaign to stop genocide? It must be a coordinated conspiracy of neo-Marxist and trans people. It couldn't possibly be that non-sociopathic humans don't want genocide. It couldn't be that people naturally don't want to see children bombed. No, it's got to be a conspiracy involving Lenin and Che Guevara and maybe lizards.
You have an opportunity, many opportunities, but this is one of them at least, to say something to people who believe that they're on the side of the good when they're protesting Israel's actions in the Middle East after October 7th.
Wow, that was a lot of words to try and avoid saying the word genocide. Israel's actions in the Middle East after October 7th. Man, trying to avoid saying genocide takes a lot of energy. Does anyone have some Adderall I can snort? I know I'm dressed like a snake oil salesman, but I ran out of all my pills and elixirs yesterday.
The first one is radical Islam. The other strand is radical, progressive, woke idiots, for the lack of a better term.
Yes, radical, progressive, woke idiots. Is protesting against genocide the radical belief system, or is it committing the genocide, you sick? You are both psychopaths, and in order to defend your psychopathic behavior, you have to define college students who don't think the mass murder of children should continue as radicals. It's not radical for Israel to murder 300,000 people in 18 months when accounting for disease and famine, but it's so radical for that kid to hold up a sign saying no more U.S. money for genocide. Wow, I wonder how they got radicalized. Where did they get their militarized Sharpie pens to make their weapons of mass construction paper? Probably from China.
naive people who view the world in a neo-Marxist frame where there's always a victim and a victimizer. And Israel, look, I've got white skin here, so I'm the bad guy by definition.
No, not by definition, by action, by the things that you do. I've got white skin too, and I'm Jewish, and for some odd reason, no one is accusing me of war crimes and ethnic cleansing. Why is that? Oh, I've got an idea. Maybe it's because I haven't done those things, and you, being a soulless waste of flesh, have done those things. Maybe it has nothing to do with your skin color and everything to do with the fact that you're a pathetic, sick, clown-faced who starves children as a hobby. Just spitballing here.
I've got white skin here, so I'm the bad guy by definition. Forget the fact that the land of Israel has been my homeland for 3,800 years.
Really? It's been your homeland for 3,800 years? Wow. I assume you mean your family's homeland for 3,800 years, but is that true?
My dad, may rest in peace, Jim Bennett, he was raised not far from here in San Francisco.
But I thought Israel has been your family's homeland for 3,800 years. But your father is from San Francisco. Is there a San Francisco, Israel I don't know about? In fact, a Google search shows your family on your father's side lived in the U.S. since 1851, and your mother's parents moved to the U.S. during World War II, originally coming from Poland and Russia. So, not Israel. On your mother's side, not Israel. And on your father's side, not Israel. And even Israel was not Israel a few decades ago. It was called Mandatory Palestine. Got it. Man, it's really tough to poke holes in the lies of Zionists. I'm exhausted from all this deep research I had to do.
It's incredibly difficult to pull someone out of that frame, because basically, if you're the aggressor and he's the victim, he's allowed to do anything. He's allowed to murder people, torture people, because he's the victim.
Oh, God, where to begin with this garbage? Every accusation from an Israeli is an admission. Murder, torture, these are all things regularly done by the IDF to Palestinians. In fact, they've even tortured UN staff. And last year, 9 IDF soldiers were arrested in July for allegedly physically and sexually torturing Palestinian men. The soldiers were ultimately released because Israel remembered that they support sexual violence against Palestinians. So those soldiers aren't criminals, they're national heroes. On Israeli morning TV, presenters and analysts discussed how to best arrange the of Palestinian prisoners, criticizing only the disorganized manner in which it was conducted. Come on, guys, get your torture more organized. It's not called disorganized crime, now is it? But Naftali Bennett and his ballsack polisher, Jordan Peterson, want you to believe it's the Palestinians who are doing these heinous things. Also, should we take a moment to discuss why Bennett thinks the proper hand motion to make when talking about pulling someone out of a mindset is grabbing them by the hair like he's waterboarding them? Is this because waterboarding is close to his heart? Naftali Bennett would make the most horrifying mime to ever live. And lastly, did he actually admit Israel is the aggressor?
If you're the aggressor, and he's the victim, he's allowed to do anything.
But I thought Israel was the poor victim in all of this. I thought Israel was defending itself against the terrorist 3-year-olds in Gaza. Well, it's good to see this heartless lunatic admit Israel is the aggressor. Here's to small victories. Now let's get another schizophrenic history lesson from the former prime minister.
Before the Jews came back home, beginning in the late 1800s, it was a desolate, barren, miserable land infested with mosquitoes and malaria, and there was always Jewish presence, but it wasn't under Jewish governance.
Hold on a second there, Skip. It was desolate and barren, which literally means no people there, which is kind of one of your main arguments for why the land could be stolen in 1948, because no one was there anyway. But then you say there were always Jews living there, but they were not the ones governing it. So if there's no one there, who exactly was governing it? Oh, perhaps all the people there. In fact, before mandatory Palestine became Israel, because 33 nations at the UN said so on a drunken bender, it had about 1.2 million Arabs living there. They don't count? They don't matter? Montana has a similar population right now. Does that mean we can go there and steal Montana because it's desolate and barren? I mean, we did steal Montana from the Native Americans, but that was a while ago. Let's focus on your thing.
Yeah, well, the victim-victimizer narrative is a very
You tell me,
pervasive.
though, you know, because tell me, why are so many people against Israel, and what can we do about it? You're the psychiatrist here.
What can you do about it? Oh, I don't know. Stop genociding? That might be a good start. In fact, I'll make a list of 10 things you can do to help get the world to support Israel. Well, actually, it's just the word stop genociding written 10 times in a row. That would actually help a lot. Stop bombing hospitals and children and murdering journalists and aid workers and poets and academics and starving everyone and being all around sick. Maybe try that for a bit. See how it goes. See how it fits. This is like Jeffrey Dahmer mid-murder spree with blood dripping down his chin, going on TV and saying, what can I do to make you guys like me a little more? Why is everyone against poor Jeffy? It's not really fair. Let's see what genocide apologist and all-around fraudster Jordan Peterson has to add.
I think part of it is the politics of envy. Jews are the perennially successful minority. The Jews became disproportionately successful, and that always happens. It always happens. And so then the issue is, well, what do you do with the disproportionately successful? And the response to that is twofold. You can be happy for the fact of their productivity and their success because they share their knowledge and their abilities with everyone around them, and the rising tide lifts all boats. Or you can decide that anybody who has more took it and is a thief and a crook.
Yes, totally. It could be that, or it could be that Israel's committing a genocide. It's been live streamed around the world. You clowns. Envy of these genocidal monsters. This is like asking why some slaves rebelled and killed their captors. It must be that they were envious. Not that they wanted their freedom at all. Not that they felt that they weren't someone's property. No, they just saw some baubles in the plantation house that they wanted. But I do love the budding bromance between these two. When one sociopath meets another and you can tell they just become fast friends. So cute. In this next moment, I want to show you Peterson accidentally admits that he finds it hard to have empathy for people who aren't him and his direct family, which kind of sums up his entire worldview.
We're relatively insular by our psychology. You know, it's me, and then it's me and my family, and then it's me and my family and my community.
That's
and,
right.
Right. It's harder for us to extend that ethos of concern as people get more distal.
Thanks for explaining your psychosis to us, Jordy. Most people may care more about their own family, but normal humans still have a deep empathy for innocent people being murdered and maimed, no matter how distant they are from us. Most people can't see a video of children killed by Israel and go, you know, I'll invite the former Prime Minister of Israel on my show to explain how tough it is to be a poor, brutal, apartheid state ethnic cleanser. I'll try to launder Israel's image a little to help them keep their mass slaughter going. But my hat is off to you, Jordy, for admitting you have one of the telltale signs of sociopathy, lack of empathy for other humans. Bennett seemed to realize that they were going down a bad path there, so he shifted back to how tough it is for poor Israel, which is the true victim.
What do you think we can do? Because, you know, sometimes I'm flabbergasted. I'm always interviewing at CNN, BBC, and all that, and I feel sometimes I'm barely moving the needle. And You know, the reality is so different than what we're portrayed, and what do you think we can do about it?
Well, I think going after the victim-victimizer narrative is a good long-term strategy. But it's also very bad for you to regard yourself as a victim.
Horrible.
Because you lose agency and you lose hope.
Yes, don't be the victim. Oh, wait. Naftali Bennett has spent this entire interview trying to paint Israel as a victim and saying, what do we do about it? And Jordan Peterson, in other interviews, is constantly complaining about being attacked, censored, insulted. So his grift is kind of built on being a victim who says, don't be a victim. Interesting, but not unprecedented. Many grifters spend their time lying and then saying, don't trust the liars, or moralizing while they themselves are gut-wrenchingly immoral. You're part of a storied and proud tradition, Jordy. But the other reason this is so important to Peterson's grift is because he's constantly defending the oppressors, defending those with power, defending those who assault, abuse, extract, and exploit others. He's on the side of the empire, the side of fascist forces, the side of Israel, the side of white men who dominate our society's positions of power still today. If Darth Vader were real, Jordy Peterson would be on his side too. Well, thank you both for this fun conversation where you demonstrated your sociopathy to the world. Next time, maybe do it on a psychiatrist's couch so we don't have to see it.
Can I curse on this show, or is this a no?
Absolutely. Listen.
The fucking audacity. The fucking audacity for
Hoda
Israel.
Katebi is on the show. She just made
to
it. She just
suggest
arrived.
that anything is an existential threat to them, an illegal settler colonial state, when they are carrying out a genocide, like a actual literal genocide against the people, wiping them, attempting to wipe them off the face of the earth, killing generations of Palestinians. And they want to claim existential threat. That is total bullshit. And I don't understand why these dots haven't been connected, or they are being connected, but you know, it's not being uplifted based on the algorithms that they have control over and Western media.
Isn't it amazing that Zionism is premised on the idea that people can come back to a land thousands of years later, but Palestinians should forget what happened 70 years ago?
100%, yeah.
I find that insane.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
You know what's really given me an ulcer in recent weeks and months? The general complete lack of self-awareness from Zionists who say stuff like, there's no right of return, forget about it. Why are you still holding on to something that happened in 1948 while they hold on to something that happened 4,000 years or 3,000 years ago? But also like the recent self-awareness. Have you seen all these people when I go, Iran hit a hospital.
I was just going to say that.
Iran hit a hospital. But to be clear, I'm not in favor of Iran hitting hospitals. But you're saying Iran hit a hospital?
There's what deplorable people would attack a hospital with people in it. You're those
look
people.
In the mirror.
You're literally those people. And you know, I think it was like the sports minister said something like that. And like, who cares about the sports minister? But they had attacked a hospital in Iran like 2 days before. So the self-awareness is lacking.
As a journalist who covers this stuff, a few words just sum up the Israeli position. If you want to sum up the entirety of Israel's messaging machine, it is every accusation is a confession.
We're gonna strike anyway, says Benjamin Netanyahu. Does this guy, do we have any control over these people? Do we have any influence over there? We give them billions of dollars. Do we have absolutely any influence at all with that country at this moment? This is like your kid walks into your house with a new tattoo, smoking a cigarette, and you're like, young lady, what? What the fuck's going on? You're smoking in the house? You have a tattoo? And they're saying you're not going to school. Hey, ma, fuck you. And I need $500. What? And then as you're saying it, you're writing the check. You're like, I cannot believe you're acting. You want me to make it out to cash? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Here's your money.
Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. Or they depopulate the area. The government doesn't lie, it engages in disinformation. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that.
Do you reckon we should make jokes about Israel tonight? All right, well, since you asked for it, I have heard it's good for your career to make jokes about Israel, so I want to make it in Hollywood. This is my audition tape. Now, I don't want to be called an anti-Semite criticising Israel. Sometimes people say, oh, you're criticising Israel. Are you an anti-Semite? Do you hate all Jews? Which is ridiculous. That's like making fun of Saudi Arabia and someone saying, excuse me, are you an Islamophobe? Do you hate all Muslims? Or making fun of New Zealand. Oh, are you a sheepophobe? Do you hate all sheep? That's like someone saying, oh, do you hate everyone from the third world just because you make fun of Durra and Woodridge, which I have been told are your shit suburbs. So, anybody here from Durra or Woodridge? You? Hey, well done on saving up for the tickets. Congrats. And you? What, you are all laughing at poor people right now. So, but look, there's a reason Australia loves Israel. You know, as a state. You know, not the people. I feel like, you know, we've got a lot in common. You know. Both countries are very young. Australia's only a couple hundred years old. Israel, 76 years old. Very young, 76. There are people that have lived in Israel longer than Israel has lived in Palestine. Well, that is very young. Both countries, Australia and Israel, both have a lot of white people in very hot places. So they're obviously indigenous to the land. And both countries, Australia and Israel, were formed off the back of some pretty genocidal mantras. You know, Australia started off the back of terra nullius, which means nobody's land. Israel, a land without a people, for a people without a land. So both countries, colonisers just rocked up, all like, oh, well, there's nobody here. There's absolutely nobody here. And then they proceeded to kill absolutely nobody and steal their land and start their countries. That's another similarity. And also, both countries, Australia, Israel, wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the British. I mean, I don't know where we'd be, but that's a separate show, you know? But if it wasn't for the British, Israel wouldn't exist. Before the British came to Palestine in 1917, who was there? Just Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Jews, just all hanging out, eating hummus and couscous or whatever. And then the British rocked up, the original Barmy Army, and they just took over the place and they renamed it British Mandate Palestine, which sounds like something Elon Musk would name his kid. And the locals are furious. They were like, hey, Britain, you can't just keep taking over countries, all right? This is 1917. You could get cancelled. And the British were like, don't worry about it. We've got a plan. And they were like, what's your plan? They put out a letter. It was a letter called the Balfour Declaration, which the British government sent to an investment banker named Lord Rothschild. And they said, in this letter, we commit to creating a homeland for the Jewish people. The Palestinians are like, oh, sick. Where are you going to do that? And they're like, here, actually. Palestinians like, well, we're already here. And the British are like, yes, well, we have dibsed it now. Dibs, like the first day of school when you run in and you throw your bag on a seat and you're like, that's my desk now. And the Palestinians like, you can't just give away something that you just stole. That's like giving away a car that you just stole, Britain. And the British were like, interesting analogy, but no, we are not giving away the whole car. We're not doing Australia again. We are merely going to give away most of your car, but you will still have your wheel, but it'll be around your neck, and over time it'll get tighter and tighter, suffocating and killing most of you. But don't worry about that minor detail. It's a minor detail. Trust me, we're the British, baby. This is what we do everywhere we go. The natives are like, oh my God, Britain, do it again. That was so much fun. Do it again. Do it again. In fact, right now, we're in a place called India, and we're about to cut that country up, create a new country called Pakistan. And believe me, both India and Pakistan are both just going to get along like BFFs forever. Trust me. It's going to be like one of our greatest legacies. You don't believe me? All right, well, speak to the Indians yourself. You speak to the Indians. The Indians are like, don't trust these talcum powder faces, okay? Don't. We were just standing there on the shores of India, and suddenly this boat rocks up, and we were like, oh, hello, white boat people. Can we interest you in a table for one? Oh, they just walked right in. Look at that, Raj. Wow, the confidence of a white prince. Make yourselves at home. They've taken my home. Okay, shit. What are they doing to the place? Okay. 200 years later, they're like, it's getting a bit late, and We are a bit hungry, but you have sent all of our food to England, including spices for some reason. You don't like flavor, but you have sent spices to England. Did you mean to send the mayonnaise instead? But bit of confusion. We are hungry. Do you need a lift home? We are a nation of taxi drivers. We can drop you home. Uber X as well, you know. Or if you want Uber Black, you will need to go to the classier brown country you have colonized, Sri Lanka, actually. Much better looking people. They are the surgeons in the hospital, not the bloody GP. The bloody GP. Surgeons. Any Indians here tonight? Shut up, Indians. No one cares. There is 1 billion of you. We are rare Pokemons. You are... Okay, we'll save the brown on brown racism for next show. Anyway, the British were like, don't worry, we're going to leave. And they left, they cut up the country before they left, and they created Pakistan, killed like 500,000 people instantly, displaced 1.5 million people, drained India of $1 trillion, which now makes it impossible for India to ever come out of poverty. And they left, took the best shit, unashamedly, took the Kohinoor diamond, which is valued at like 250 million pounds. They took it, the Queen used to wear it on her crown during the Christmas message. Everyone be nice to each other, look after each other, Merry Christmas, be kind to each other. Indians were just looking at that like, give us back that fucking rock, bitch, give it back. Stole it from a child. They're supposed to be the head of the church, stole it from a 14-year-old kid on their way out, you know? I'm familiar with the royal family's history of Christianity. It doesn't say thou shalt not steal, except if it's like this real sick diamond, you know? Stole it from a 14-year-old child, you know? The only thing you're supposed to steal from a child, according to their Christianity, is his virginity, you know? Like... No, I'm talking about the history, their history, not the religion. Like the royal families, not the... Oh, let's get back to Palestine. Let's talk about... Palestine seems safer. All right. Hell. All right, fast forward. 1947, you know, the British announced they're leaving India, and they leave. A couple months later, they announced they're going to leave Palestine because they're downsizing or something. And a couple months later, they leave, and then they hand it over to a group of Israeli militias and the UN, who then eventually cut up Palestine, create Israel at the expense of 750,000 Palestinians being violently expelled from their land, ethnically cleansed. 530 villages were razed to the ground. It's called the Nakba, Palestinians, which means the catastrophe. And now Israel occupies 78% of original Palestine, the only country in the world with no actual boundaries, because it just keeps expanding. All because of the British. You know, they gave away something that they stole. The freaking cash converters of countries, aren't they? Acted like they didn't know it was stolen. Oh yeah, no, it was like that when it came in actually. Yeah, I don't know. That's what the bloke he bought it in like. He wanted $5, yeah? Some people now try to justify what Israel's doing, stealing land, colonizing Palestine in 2024 by saying, well, you know, Jewish people have a right to the land. They've been there for thousands of years. Jewish people were there 2,000-3,000 years ago, which is very weird logic for stealing something now, you know, or 3,000 years. Like my background is Sri Lankan Moor, you know, 3,000 years ago I got Indian ancestry, Moroccan, Yemeni, Iraqi. I can't just rock up to Saddam Hussein's palace and be like, oi, Uday, that's my bedroom, bro. Piss off, you know? 3,000 years ago. It's ridiculous logic, you know? 3,000 years ago, Egyptian pharaohs used to own Jewish slaves. Does that mean Akmal could just call up Jerry Seinfeld and be like, oi, bro, you owe me royalties, right? Don't be a soup Nazi about it. Stealing shit. 3,000 years. That's like doing an Ancestry.com test. Oh, I'm 0.1% Chinese. I guess I own all the violins, you know? I think you get the point. But no one's saying that Jewish people haven't lived in Palestine for thousands of years. Jewish people were there when Jesus was alive. Jewish people were there when Jesus happened to find himself nailed to the cross. Not saying they did that, because that would be anti-Semitic, but Jesus will be back, and he'll have a victim statement. Then we'll find out what happened. But, you know... But Jesus was from Palestine. He's from the West Bank. He's from Bethlehem, which is under military occupation now, but he was from there, you know, which is a miracle in and of itself, because he had very blonde Scandinavian skin and hair, and everybody else looked like Waleed Ali, you know. He looked like a member of ABBA. It's a miracle. I know it's weird to talk about during a comedy show. Also feels like it's weird to not talk about it, but we call a spade, you know, and Australians are like, yeah, I can see there's a genocide going on, you know, I can see that, yeah, but you know what, this all wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for October 7, which is ridiculous, because that basically also assumes that life for Palestinians before October 7 was rosy, which it wasn't. You know, if you were in the West Bank, you were living under martial law. You've got to go through humiliating military checkpoints. They take hours. There are Jewish-only streets. It's literal apartheid. If you're in the Gaza Strip, Israel doesn't let anybody leave. They control everything that comes in: food, water, medicine, electricity. It's like being in a relationship with R. Kelly, you know? Does that punchline justify the speech? I've got Palestinian friends who were forced to leave when Israel was created at gunpoint. Some of them, all they got to take was the key to their home. But now they are forbidden from returning, you know? But if you were a Jewish person anywhere in the world, or you've got one Jewish parent, or you're a convert to Judaism, you're allowed to go, full citizenship, full rights. I've got a friend, he's a convert to Judaism, and he's allowed to move there, even though he still has his training wheels on his freshly circumcised penis. Like, he's allowed to go. Does that punchline justify the speech? 10 years ago, I did that show, Legally Brown. Did you guys watch that? Thank you very much. You paid for it. I wore this T-shirt that said, Free Gaza. It was at a time when Israel was bombing Gaza. It doesn't really narrow it down, to be honest. And after we recorded the show, one of the execs at SBS called me up and said, hey, Nazim, love the episode, really funny stuff. That T-shirt, though, we're going to have to delete it because it's offensive. And I was like, what? You're going to have to delete the whole episode? He's like, no, just the T-shirt. And I said, huh? And so then they, frame by frame, spent $10,000 deleting Free Gaza from a T-shirt. Now, at the time, I didn't say anything, because I'm like, well, I'm one member of this team, you know, I don't want to rock the boat. But also, if I'm honest, I was like, well, you know, I'm trying to establish a career here in comedy, you know, and also standing up for Palestine. That's a long game, you know, it's not all about doing it now. But 10 years on, being a dad, watching my friends watch their family die in 4K on their phones, clearly, silence only enables the bully. There's no such thing as being silent and playing the long game, all right? But clearly, Australians get that on the ground. Ordinary Australians can smell and see an underdog. Our government still hasn't got the message. I reckon what might make them change their mind and their stance and overwhelmingly pressure them to stop funding this genocide is maybe, if we all just did something small, just started Aussifying the way we said Gaza. Instead of calling it Gaza, we started calling it Gaza. Then Australians would be like, oh shit! Gaza's in stride, quick! Someone call up Bunnings, let's organise a sausage sizzle!
All right, folks, this is a quick segment. We've all seen a lot of photos like this. If you've been following Twitter, IDF soldiers really keeping it classy, posing with the undergarments, in some cases lingerie, of the Palestinian women who they have displaced from their homes. It's funny how they are this repressive, you know, sort of draconian, you know, just ultra right-wing Orthodox society that's incompatible with the Western values, yet they have all of this sexy underwear that the IDF likes to try on once they displace and or murder them. Here you have this charmer posing with the handbag of a Palestinian woman. Here they are trying on some more lingerie. And so Destiny, who goes by the tag Omni-Liberal on X, he's a liberal. You would think he would go there and he would set them straight. He would tell the IDF soldiers, hey, you know, you really shouldn't be doing that. Is that what he says? Well, no. He says, if you're going to do that, don't film it because it makes you look bad. Exactly. That's Destiny's advice to the IDF. Not don't taunt the women of Gaza who you've displaced and or killed, but do it off camera, right? Get off on that shit off camera because it's making you look bad. Yeah, that's actually what he says. Here he is.
You're letting the cat out of the bag.
Exactly.
I think Israel has unique issues. Here's the one piece of advice I'll give you, okay? If you're joining the IDF, okay? Leave your fucking cell phone at home and stop taking stupid fucking videos, okay? Because everybody's fucking you with them, okay? And if you see a soldier, okay, going through a fucking drawer, and listen, if you want to fucking wear a dress and you think it's funny, just don't fucking take a fucking video picture of it, okay? Jesus. Okay, yeah.
Perversion, it's sick. It's degenerate and sick.
Yep. Yep, that's his advice to the IDF. One more time.
I think Israel has unique issues. Here's the one piece of advice I'll give you, okay? If you're joining the IDF, okay? Leave your fucking cell phone at home and stop taking stupid fucking videos, okay? Because everybody's fucking you with them, okay? And if you see a soldier, okay, going through a fucking drawer, and listen, if you want to fucking wear a dress and you think it's funny, just don't fucking take a fucking video picture of it, okay? Jesus. Okay, yeah.
They're committing genocide, and this POS tells them to have fun. Yeah. Hey, it's just when we talk about...
Have fun at the genocide, boys!
Exactly. It's just like when we show the Colbert clip, scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds. This guy's a big liberal. He's a debate me bro liberal. And here he is saying, hey, you know what? If you're going to do that, leave your camera at home, because you're really fucking up the Hasbara when you film yourself being so sadistic and perverted as to pose with the undergarments of dead and or displaced Palestinian women. What a guy. Could you imagine the audience of a guy like that? Who could watch a guy like that? What charisma does he have? What sense of humor does he have? He's not even fun to hate watch. Like Vosh, I'll say about Vosh, he could be fun to hate watch because he's such an asshole. He's such a nasty bastard with such little self-awareness about what a nasty bastard that he is, that it's kind of funny in a way. You know what I mean? Yeah. To watch assholes be assholes could be entertaining. There could be some value in that. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, but all right, I get it. This guy, I don't even get it. This guy has nothing going for him. Nothing whatsoever. Who watches this man? And how could you after that? You think it's a big fucking joke that these people go in and they further denigrate people whose lives they have already destroyed? That's a big fucking joke. Hey, if you're gonna do that, put the camera away. Really? Wow. What a piece of garbage.
All right, look, I know based on a study from the Rand Corporation, at least half of you have a butt plug in your ass right now.
Exactly.
But you don't want to reinforce the idea that Israel is a society of sick, sadistic perverts.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So don't show the butt plug. People might think you're kind of weird.
Yeah, people think that looks bad. That looks weird. Don't forget, it's supposed to be the Palestinians who everyone thinks is backwards and unciviliized. Not you guys. What a prize. What a fantastic moron.
Isn't he another one of those, like freaking that tub of shit Jeremy at the Quartering who built an audience gaming?
I guess
like
so.
they didn't actually build an
audience
with their talent on the mic. No, I'm pretty sure Jeremy built an audience gaming, which explains a lot.
Yeah, that would explain a lot.
Why would you watch that guy otherwise?
Yeah,
for his fucking coffee.
Yeah, exactly. That is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. And it's good that these people expose themselves, because you watch a video like that, this guy for some reason has a huge following. And so when he does something like that,
I think he's another one of those. Yeah,
it gets around.
Started out as a gaming channel.
It gets around. Like that video has over 1 million views, and they just cannot help but expose what sickos they are. I mean, what a sick thing to say. So it's good. It's good. I'm actually happy that he did that, and I'm actually happy that someone had the wherewithal to film him saying that. It's kind of ironic that was caught on camera, that moment on camera where he's telling people not to do perverted shit on camera, that someone films him saying that. Yeah.
See, now where are the cancel pigs now?
Right, yeah.
Like that doesn't get you canceled?
Exactly.
Why does that get you canceled? I mean, look, we're not for deplatforming, but if you want to tell people, hey, you shouldn't watch this guy.
Right,
He's a sick piece of garbage. That's inbounds.
Yeah, that's inbound. That's people's consumer habits. I would never advocate for Destiny to be thrown off of Twitch or YouTube or wherever. No. But people have the right not to watch them, and they should exercise that right. They should take advantage of that right not to watch it.
Please clap.
Here are the 10 best crash outs from the Mamdani win. Number 5, Charlie Kirk tweeting, 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed 2,750 people on 9/11. Now, a Muslim socialist is on pace to run New York City. I don't get it. And look, I wish that were the end of the 9/11 comparisons, but apparently electing a Muslim to office who wants to make buses free is the right's new 9/11. And he wasn't the only one. Representative Nancy Mace and Donald Trump Jr. said something similar. So to switch it up, in number 4, I give you David Frum, champion of the Iraq War, now championing escalation with Iran, who tweeted, "Well, at least we can retire that faded and false line. Anti-Semitism has no place in New York City." It's the same Islamophobia from the right, but liberal coded. Mind you, Mamdani campaigned with a progressive Jewish candidate, Brad Lander. Dave, stick to what you know. Cheerleading for yet another illegal war in the Middle East. Number 3. Donald Trump himself. Now, remember, Trump couldn't win a local election in New York City if he tried, but he can opine on one. Zohran Mamdani, 100% communist lunatic, has just won the Democratic primary and is on his way to becoming mayor. He looks terrible. His voice is grating. He's not very smart. Okay, stop. Have you seen him? Have you seen yourself? Have you seen him? Have you seen yourself? Number 2, Laura Loomer, who's back to her Islamophobic roots and went one step further to say that no, this isn't like 9/11, but to guarantee there will be another 9/11 in New York City and Zohran K. Mamdani will be to blame. That just makes no sense, okay? Like, even if he were a jihadist, which he's not, why would a jihadist destroy a city they could be mayor of? Just do some basic racist deduction. And the number 1 crash out since Mamdani's victory is the Zionist group Beitar, who tweeted, "We urge all Jews to evacuate New York City." To which Raphael Shimonov replied, "Why would we leave after door knocking for him?" Look, there is a long road to November, and if it's laced with more of these freakouts and ends with a New York City mayor who will finally fight for working people, I'm so stoked.
You guys ready for nuclear summer? Sorry, I'm about to go scorched earth. Too real. Okay. Let's just start with a moment of silence for the shareholders at BlackRock. If nuclear war breaks out, this could be the end for them. You know, it's really a gamble what they do. So let's pray for them. They're also my sponsors. Here's a hot take. I don't like nuclear war, okay? I think it's bad. Listen, this is open dissent, right? You know, I welcome different opinions, but, no, there's no but. I don't like war. I don't like war in general. I'm just generally not a fan of war or violence. And I never want to be the one cheering war on, you know, even though all my Congress people do it. So I'm letting you know that I'm fighting a war within. I'm trying to find the restraint from those little tingles of joy of watching rockets over Tel Aviv. I'm trying to find the little restraint because I know I don't want to have these feelings of like wishing any kind of violence or, you know, destruction on any people. So I urge everybody to practice having empathy for people who you may not like. And Tel Aviv was bombed this weekend and 37 raves had to be canceled. You know, thousands of people with dual citizenship had to go to their other country of origin. And I don't know if you know about the Israeli government, but they put their people in danger. Apparently, they built a military base underneath a hospital. I mean, like, who does that? Right? Like, this whole time in Gaza, Israel would just bomb things, be like, Hamas is there. Hamas is under the hospital. Hamas is under the school. Hamas is under that child right there. Like, they would do literally all of that. And it turns out every accusation is a confession. It's reported that there's a military base under one of their giant hospitals in Tel Aviv. Is Israel Hamas? Oh my God. My mind is blown. That's not a good metaphor to use right now. But By the way, if you also get upset that I'm making jokes about Tel Aviv getting bombed, just remember, that's where my grandma's from. My grandma's from Jaffa, which is now called Tel Aviv. And so how do you think I feel watching rockets being, blown into my hometown that I can't visit? How do you think I feel? I think really what we learned in the last few days was that turns out Netanyahu was right. This whole time, he was like, Iran's gonna bomb us. And look at what's happening. Look at, you can't argue with that. Netanyahu was right. He's like, Iran's gonna bomb us. And we're like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, Iran's gonna bomb us. We're like, no, come on. He's like, Iran's gonna bomb us. And then it turns out all he had to do was bomb them first in preemptive self-defense. And the audacity of Iran to bomb back. People are saying, like, wait a second, if Iran was going to bomb you, why would you bomb them first? That's not self-defense, that's an attack. Yes, if time moves forward. You know what I'm saying? Right? That's the paradigm that you're operating in. But what if Netanyahu's in the reverse paradigm where time is backward? Then everything makes sense, right? Because this whole time you're like, why is Israel bombing Gaza? Why are they bombing Lebanon? Why are they bombing Syria? Now why are they bombing Iran? It's because if you look all the way down the line, or earlier in history, in his version, it's because eventually Israel's economy will crumble because the whole world hates them, and eventually the ethno-state will fall and become an actual democracy with equal rights for all human beings. And that's called Palestine. That's not a threat. I'm saying that's what happened in the past, in Netanyahu's mind. Okay, time in reverse. Okay. Israel attacked Iran on, why am I saying Iran? I'm talking like a politician, right? Israel attacked Iran last Thursday. Don't laugh during that part. Now it's like, these evil people. Why were they laughing? People accuse me of editing in laughter. But what they don't know is that I'm telling the audience when to laugh. So let's do that part again. Iran! So they're like, how is the audience laughing at a time like this? Fucking asshole. So Israel attacked Iran last Thursday, and they called it Operation Rising Lion. I think a better name would be Operation Aggressive Pussy. But Rising Lion, Operation Rising Lion, that's what Scar called it when he killed Mufasa in The Lion King. And you're like, no, Sammy, he pushed Mufasa off a cliff. That was Falling Lion. Okay, technicality. So Israel launched this preemptive attack on Iran. And now you have all these American politicians like, I stand with Israel. Like, well, not too close, buddy. Of course, Israel kindly offered us an invitation to join in the war against Iran. It was very nice of them. But of course, the United States declined because we're too busy having our hands tied with orchestrating the whole war in the first place. Yeah, if you want proof, this is a real thing. I saw it on the internet. The night that Israel attacked Iran, there was a spike in pizza sales right next to the Pentagon. Yeah, and apparently there's an app that tracks that, and they've measured that happens every time some giant military operation happens that the United States claims not to be involved with. But apparently the Pentagon staff is pulling all-nighters and ordering from every pizza spot imaginable. Which kind of makes sense, right? Because the US government just wants a pizza of the Middle East. You know what I mean? For years, there's been this back and forth with Israel and Iran, right? And every time, Iran has to end up exhibiting the restraint, right? You've seen it. Like, Israel has bombed with inside Iran before, and Iran will like send a bunch of rockets that'll just like do a parade and scare people and nothing will happen. So I thought, okay, Iran's gonna do the restraint thing again, very calm. And then I woke up Friday morning and I noticed that Iran's military has a Twitter account. Yeah, and I checked, it's real. I asked Grok and everything. Iran has a verified military account, and it's all in English, which is quite scary. They know who their target audience is, basically. They're speaking directly to us. And so I woke up the next morning like, oh, Iran's going to show restraint. They always do. They're calm. You know what I mean? I know so many Iranian people, they're so calm, you know? And then I wake up and I look at Iran's Twitter account and it's like blood for blood. And I was like, oh shit. It's about to get real, dude. Follow the account. They're just basically talking mad the whole time in English. It's crazy that this is how war is in 2025. Right? Can you imagine like if Japan had a Twitter account in the 1940s? Like Pearl Harbor, do you hear a buzz coming? Like, what? Pray for Japan. It's kind of how it would be, right? Like if you're familiar with World War II, Pearl Harbor was a preemptive attack because they couldn't work out a deal with negotiations, so Japan felt like they had to attack. You know, that would be like nowadays our politicians would be like, I stand with Japan, you know, and I love Japan, great country. I didn't know them back then, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, how did that whole thing end up for them? Okay, that's bad joke. Iran does not have nukes, okay? They've said it many times. The UN has inspected them. There's not nukes there, okay? Like for years, Israel was like, Iran's got nukes, they're making nukes. And Iran's like, no. America's like, Iran has nukes. And Iran's like, no, we don't. And then they sent in inspectors and they're like, yeah, they got no nukes. And the Ayatollah's like, I told you. See, everything's got to have a punchline, right? Because it should be farcical. Oh, I like that. That's good. That's good. Such an elite reference, though. It's very farcical. You know, I love that. So Iran, they have a nuclear program, but there's literally no evidence of nukes. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could give the benefit of the doubt to somebody who's claiming that there's weapons of mass destruction in a Middle Eastern country. I don't know if there's ever been any precedent of that we should pay attention to historically, but I'm just going to do clean slate in my mind. If someone says we have weapons of mass destruction, I'm going to be like, yup, let's go get them. Iran does not have nukes. They have a nuclear program where they're currently enriching uranium, okay? Uranium, which is one of the possibilities to make a nuclear bomb, but it has to be a certain level of enrichment. I might be wrong about this, but it has to be like 65% enrichment, and they're only at 63, okay? So, okay, they're close, okay, but they're not fully enriched. You know what I'm saying? The irony here is that uranium is an element on the periodic table, and its periodic letter, what do you call it? Its letter? Periodic. Its periodic symbol? That's so dumb. And its periodic symbol is just you, right? Which makes sense. It's typical Israel, always making it about you. Whatever. But we're talking about potential nuclear weapons, okay? Now, why are they called nuclear? Okay, because nuclear refers to the nucleus of an atom. And to make a nuclear explosion, you either have to have nuclear fission or nuclear fusion, meaning you either have to break up a nucleus or you have to merge two nuclei together. And I think this is actually a metaphor for the nuclear family. Because right now, the birth rate in America is lower than ever before. And we don't have the same old traditional family values that we had back when we were actually dropping nuclear bombs in the 1940s. Right? Go nuclear, go nuke. It's like, go nuclear in, go nuclear out. You know what I mean? Nuclear within, nuclear without. What I'm saying is stop tearing apart the nuclear family. That's a message for ICE, actually. Oh, now you're on board! Now you like it. So Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and in fact, they allow their country to be inspected. Israel, on the other hand, does not. Did you know that? Israel does not allow, and so again, I'm against nuclear war, okay? And I guess it makes sense in theory that not everybody should have nuclear weapons. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I should have a nuclear weapon. You know what I mean? I get a little hangry sometimes. You know? So I get it. Not everybody should have a nuclear weapon. And then you're like, well, Sammy, then we need somebody to decide who gets a nuclear weapon and who doesn't. I'm like, okay, logistically that makes sense. Well, then who should it be? The country that bombs the most other countries in the world? No, it should be like Switzerland or something. You know what I mean? Like, it should be like Hawaii. You know, like, I think Hawaii should decide who gets bombed and who doesn't. Right? Mahalo. We know at the end of the day that, like, this whole conquest of the Middle East goes beyond one country or one government or one political party. It goes deeper into the Western world's economic imperialism of the world. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, it's not just about the Middle East. You see it, you know, you see it in Asia, you see it in Ukraine, like you see it in all these other places in the world. And in this particular instance, we're fixated, or we claim to be, caring about uranium. The irony here is that when uranium is oxidized, it actually appears as a black rock. Was that a truth bomb or was it nuclear?
Mehdi, why is Israel singled out?
Yeah, I don't accept the premise of the question, obviously. It's interesting you should say that Israel singled out. There's a little R going out. Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, go back on YouTube and see that the first Intelligence Squared debate I did was not about Israel. I came here a few months ago to talk about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its human rights abuses. So before I even turned up for Israel, I came to condemn Saudi Arabia. And this, I get it. There are lots of UN resolutions condemning Israel. I get that. But if you look at actual practical sanctions, there are no sanctions on Israel from Western countries for human rights abuses. There are against Syria, there are against Russia, there are against Iran, there are against North Korea. So no, I don't think Israel's being singled out. I'd actually like to see sanctions put on Israel so it's treated like other human rights abuses. Consistency, single standard. Right.
It was. I actually love that moment because Mehdi Hasan is able to take a question and flip it to his benefit. The person asks Mehdi Hasan why is it that Israel is being singled out in a negative way, and he's able to flip it and show that Israel is being singled out, but in a positive way to their benefit, and I want them to be treated just like everyone else. Great debate tactic.
It's legitimate for Israel to remove the Hamas terror regime in order to prevent another October 7th. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Hassan.
No, it's not. It's a loaded question. I'm going to say it was legitimate for Israel to defend its citizens inside of Israel. It's not legitimate to occupy Palestinian territory for decades on end. And let me answer. Can I actually answer what you came to
If I can rebut,
let me answer John's question. Let me answer
Elon, you've had about 2 or 3 minutes in a row. Go
you
ahead,
asked a very interesting question of Elon. You pointed out that he keeps saying, notice the sleight of hand. You said that he said, and he said it many times, not just here, Hamas should be destroyed. When you asked him, Israeli military experts in general say it can't be destroyed. Notice what Elon said? He said, remove from power, quickly move the goalpost there, because he knows that Hamas can't be destroyed by these means. In fact, the former head of Israel's military,
said from
let me
the
finish
very
my point.
beginning.
The former head of Israel's military, who was a member of Netanyahu's war cabinet, he said earlier this year, quote, anyone who says you can destroy Hamas is telling tall tales. So it's not me calling Elon Levy a liar, it's the former head of the Israeli military.
Mr. Hassan, from the beginning.
Again, an excellent moment. Mehdi Hasan is so good at being able to question the premise and break away from the premise. So in this question, he actually got cornered into a yes or no question. He broke out of it right away. He said, this is not a yes or no question. You know who else does that really well in debates? Drumroll please, Donald Trump. Now say whatever you might about him, he's a great debater. So again, Mehdi Hasan is not only able to break away from that framing, he is also able to make the other person look bad by showing, hey look, he's been moving the goalposts this whole time. Again, excellent debate technique.
In northern Lebanon, 23 people bombed by your military, 2 babies killed, Jonathan. That is what you stand for. You serve the IDF, the Israeli military, which, as I say, is being investigated, the ICJ, and the ICC. You serve a military that has been credibly accused by the United Nations just last week, by Israeli media, which showed videos of mass rape of Palestinian detainees. The New York Times this week reported that your military sent children, Palestinian children, as human shields into booby-trapped tunnels and buildings. Is that what you did, Jonathan? Can you tell us today, did you ever send a Palestinian child as a human shield into a tunnel? Because the New York Times is saying your military did that. The World Food Program is saying your military is starving the people of northern Gaza. Did you starve people when you were in the military, Jonathan? What do you stand for? Starvation, mass rape, ethnic cleansing, genocide? Every human rights group in the world says your military is an abuser of human rights.
Ah, beautiful Piers Morgan, classic Piers Morgan moment. And he's with Jonathan, who is or used to be an IDF spokesperson. Mehdi Hasan did a great job just proving to him that they are not the most moral army in the world, as they like to go tell everyone. It's just hilarious.
I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point.
They're dead.
They're the pictures Hamas wants.
But there are also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not.
Unbelievable. Just the arrogance, the hubris. Unbelievable.
I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died. Those children. Oh, wow. First of all, we don't want to see a single...
Did you hear Mehdi Hasan say, oh wow, like he's in shock himself, but don't worry, he destroys this fella.
Killed.
Okay, here's my question for you. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
Just so many aspects to this. First of all, I totally remember that moment when the IDF were saying, oh my God, look at these terrorist names in the hospital. Turns out it was just days of the week. Hilarious. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if everyone realized that, if the media even, explained that later on. However, Mehdi Hasan is also so good on his feet of all of the other lies that the IDF says, and he's even able to verify that, yeah, this tweet was put up and it's still there a week later. How is he so quick on his toes like that all the time? I have no idea. He's talented.
How else do you get rid of Hamas if you don't go about it in the blunt, brutal manner that Israel is doing? And if you do it the way they're doing it, how do you avoid the kind of casualty rate of people under 18, given that that's half the population?
So, 3 things very briefly. Number 1, you do it by not deliberately targeting civilian targets and schools and hospitals and cemeteries and mosques and universities and churches. You don't have snipers shooting at hospitals or Christian women inside a church. That's how you avoid the casualties. Number 2, I don't accept the premise of your question that this is the way to defeat Hamas. I think even if I'm an Israeli hawk, I criticize Netanyahu and say, this is not the way to defeat Hamas. This is actually absurd to think you can defeat Hamas in this way. And number 3, look, the reality is Hamas is a symptom of the problem. As long as you treat Hamas as the problem rather than as a symptom of the problem, you're never going to get rid of Hamas. Or if you do, by some fantasy means, get rid of Hamas, you'll just get another version of Hamas, because now you've got tens of thousands of orphans, you've got people who've lost their kids, their spouses, their siblings. What, you think they're not going to fight back in the years to come? You think they're not going to take revenge?
That's how I feel.
It's absolute madness to believe.
I feel the same way.
Then we agree.
You see how Piers Morgan really behaves with Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi Hasan has destroyed Piers Morgan so many times on his own show that it's just hilarious at this point. And so many of these top 10 moments are from Piers Morgan Uncensored. Now, something that I did want to mention here is that the question that Piers Morgan asks, like, how do you get rid of Hamas without all of these casualties? You notice he doesn't ask that anymore. And the reason for that is Israel made it very clear that they're able to if they want to. When they killed Hezbollah using the beeper mechanism, they made it very clear that if they want to get rid of someone without casualties, they're able to do it. And that's why you don't see that question anymore.
For defense of international institutions at this moment as it relates to holding the state of Israel to account?
I have just one sentence to say about that, is that the entire world wants a ceasefire, and the United States and Israel and
I don't know, the Micronesia and whatever else don't, right? The entire world takes a very different view, unfortunately, to the people in this room and to Douglas and Natasha. The International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the UNHCR, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Oxfam, Christian Aid. Yep, you're booing. What does it come to when you're booing Oxfam? What does that tell you about yourselves? You're sitting here booing Oxfam to defend Benjamin Netanyahu. Let me just deal with something you just said. You talked about debunking propaganda. First of all, you can't even get Israeli propaganda straight. The Israeli government's own security agency, Shin Bet, investigated what you just said and said, no, we found no evidence that workers from Gaza were involved in the October 7th attack. Oh, Shin Bet are lying. They're booing Shin Bet, the Israeli security service. Got it.
Oh, this was a viral moment that I'm sure most of you have seen. This went viral on WhatsApp, to be honest. And something that I think what went viral about this moment is just how he's just off the cuff able to name all these different agencies that support what he's saying, and then also able to say Israeli sources that support what he's saying. And the audience obviously boos because it was a heavily Zionist audience. But yeah, this was one of the best moments of the last year.
Judging their program. How many nuclear weapons does Iran have as of today?
Right now, I hope none.
Okay, how many does Israel have?
No idea.
No idea? You were in the government. They don't tell you that stuff.
No idea.
Who do they tell?
I'm telling you, I never discussed it. But it's irrelevant.
It's between, you never discussed Israel's nuclear weapons. You can say that hand on heart, you've never discussed Israel's nuclear. You're expecting us to believe that the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel never discussed Israel's nuclear deterrent. Seriously, then?
No. So let me tell you. It's not all slogans and sound bites, Mehdi.
Tell yourself.
I did not discuss Israel nuclear weapons. I did discuss Israel nuclear policy. There's a big difference.
Okay. So now we've got past that semantic evasion.
No, you have to.
How many nuclear weapons does Israel have? Because experts say it's anywhere between 80 and 400.
So what?
So what?
Yeah, so what? Has Israel ever threatened?
Do you recognize the hypocrisy of Israel having a secret illicit nuclear weapons program that it won't open up its doors to and won't talk about, and then lecturing everyone else in the region about nuclear weapons?
Absolutely not. You know why?
You talked about hypocrisy.
One of the reasons why Mehdi Hassan is such a great debater is because of how well he's able to communicate. So in this case, he's able to call out the BS and then also call out the hypocrisy. He's able to call out the BS in which that how do you not know whether or not Israel has a nuclear weapon or not? Obviously he does. Obviously they do have it. And this is from several years ago. Now the whole world knows. But like back then, it was like under top secret. And he's also able to call out their hypocrisy and being so scared about everyone else having one, but they themselves have one.
Just clarify something you just said. You said Palestinian prisoners are being raped to death by Israeli soldiers?
Yes, this is a report in the New York Times last week.
Okay, I don't believe that to be true. Nonetheless, the
A
question.
41-year-old detainee said the interrogators made me sit on something like a hot metal stick and it felt like fire. He said another detainee died after they put the electric stick up his anus.
No, it's repulsive.
This is an Israeli dungeon that CNN and New York Times have both reported on. UN investigated. So to free people from that prison, can you kill lots of innocent people according to the logic of the raid in Gaza?
What I'm trying to say is, if you represent the Palestinian people, you represent the Israeli people, we look at this quite differently. I don't want to.
I know you do, which is why I'm asking the question, Congressman. I understand that you see it differently. A lot of people watching at home say, why? Why aren't all lives equal?
They should be.
But they're not.
Well, then let's
go.
You. Then let's go. Look, what I don't want to do is get into a debate of who suffered worse, whose lives.
By the way, I'm asking about our lives treated equally.
Innocent Palestinian lives matter just as much as innocent Israeli lives, Muslim lives as much as Jewish and Christian lives. That's who I am. Now, with all that said, war is hell, and this is nauseating. And we're trying
I worry
to get
about
back.
this line, war is hell, because can't Hamas say the same thing when you accuse them of war crimes? They can say war is hell.
Yes,
Isn't that why we have rules to war? So that we stop it from being hell?
Yes, they can. War is hell.
This poor fella got schooled on Mehdi Hassan's own TV show on Zeteo, and basically he's so unaware of the Palestine-Israel conflict, which is so sad, because when you're in government, you should know about these, especially because we're paying for it. Unbelievable, sad moment. But yeah, nonetheless, I felt bad for the guy in a weird way.
You said that Trump called for the ethnic cleansing of legal immigrants in the United States. No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
What did he say?
He said he wanted to deport illegal immigrants.
No, he didn't actually.
Yes, he did.
Piers, you're wrong.
When Mehdi Hassan looks at you this way and is so sure of himself with that little smirk on and basically asking you questions without looking at you, just know you're about to get destroyed, man. You're about to get destroyed. Poor Piers Morgan. This was a legendary interview. And this is truly where I can say poor Piers Morgan got destroyed on his own show.
That's what he said. Again, anyone can play the tape after his interview. You're wrong. You should do better homework.
Ethnic
when
cleansing is a forced expulsion,
I love your team.
usually involving killing of members of a specific religious or ethnic group.
Hold on.
That's what ethnic
I
cleansing
really
is.
like your team. I deal with them a lot when I come in. But you should talk to whoever did your research, because that's wrong. You know what he said? Go watch the clip. It's on tape. He said, we've got to get rid of them from Springfield.
Yeah.
Who are the people in Springfield? Haitians. They're not illegal immigrants.
So it's interesting, Springfield.
Hold on, no, don't jump around. You just got something wrong.
You're going to mention Springfield. I didn't get it wrong.
No, you did. We could play the tape back. He said illegal immigrants. That's not true. He said Haitians should be. You've got to get rid of them.
Do you think
he's called it a bloody operation? You okay with 14 million people being violently removed from their homes?
Are you?
4 million American children
Okay,
losing
let me
their
ask
parents.
you a question.
It's outrageous.
Now, before we move on to our #1 top Mehdi Hassan moment, I just wanted to say make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of the folks that have become members to support this channel. I really do appreciate that. And if you want to help support this channel as well, because a lot of this content does get demonetized or shadow banned, make sure you become a member. It's only $2.99 a month. The link will be in the description below. Now let's continue.
More than 50% of social housing in London is now occupied by people who are not British. That is not true.
I'd need to look at the statistics.
We have the statistics. According to the London government,
I also wrote...
the figure in London is 84%. According to the 2021 census data, only 14% of Londoners living in social housing did not hold a UK passport. This has been pointed out to you for the last year.
No, it hasn't.
In fact, you went back on GB News and corrected it and said 48% go to people who are headed by people who are not born in Britain, which is a different point. But you would accept the vast majority of people in social housing are British.
I'd need to look at the data.
I've got the data.
No.
It's right
But
here.
the fact that
It's right
48,
here.
I think
You can
the
read it.
48,
Copied and pasted.
I think the fact that 48% of social housing in this country has gone to families that are headed by somebody who was not born in the country is a problem.
So that's a different argument, with respect.
Well,
and
I'd
let's
like
talk
to
about
have
that argument.
Well, let's have that.
No, let's have that argument. You were wrong on the first point.
I don't think I was wrong on the first
You're
point.
100% wrong.
Well, I'd like to look at the data.
The Mayor of London, the census data.
I don't think the Mayor of London would be a credible source on that.
Okay, the London government. The London government don't know who the... All right, how about...
It's a highly political thing.
All right, how about the Ministry of Housing? 90% of social homes go to UK nationals. You're making some sweeping claims and they're wrong.
When I last visited Palestine, which was 2022, and I worked with Palestinian women who'd been tortured in Israeli jails, I was told then that there's no post-traumatic stress disorder here because the trauma is never post. It's always with us.
Today on Centre Stage, Gabor Mate is a retired physician and an author who has studied, spoken and written extensively on stress, trauma, addiction and child development, and also on Israel and Palestine. Gabor Mate, thank you very much for joining us here on Centre
Pleasure
Stage.
to be here.
Let's get right into it then. You've written and spoken extensively about Gaza since the war there began a year and a half ago. What is it you think that people need to understand, or more accurately, what they need to understand more about what is happening there?
People think that history began on October the 7th. But as a Jew and a former Zionist, I've been very closely engaged with this issue for decades. And already in 1967, it was clear to me that Israel had fought that war to capture territory that they'll never give it back. And so that when you look at October the 7th, what people need to understand, it didn't begin on that day. It's been an ongoing process dating back long before 67 of dispossession, suppression, mass killings of Palestinians. Just one fact I'll mention is that in 2004, there was a psychiatric study of the mental health of Gazan children. Only about 2% of them had no traumatic symptoms at all. And this was before Hamas even came on the scene as the ruling party in Gaza. So if anybody thinks that the traumatization of the Palestinians began on October the 7th, they need to understand that this is an ongoing event that has shadowed all the 20th century, beginning in the late 19th. And October the 7th was just another, not just another, but another tragic flare-up in an ongoing process.
I mean, Israel referred to it at the time as Israel's 9/11.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, a lot of younger people who don't understand the historical context, that was, in many ways, a beginning of what we're seeing now.
Even when 9/11 didn't just happen out of the blue. 9/11 happened when the Americans had already bombed and killed and caused the deaths of multiple tens and even hundreds of thousands of people in the Muslim world. Not to justify 9/11, but even 9/11 didn't begin on 9/11. It's in the absence of historical knowledge and the ignorance of the impact of Western colonial intervention in the Muslim, particularly the Arab world, that people can think that 9/11 was strange. But, you know, the British were bombing Iraq back in the 1920s. The French and the British carved up the Middle East between them in the secret agreements made during the First World War. So this interface between the West and the Muslim world, particularly the Arab world, did not begin either with 9/11 or with October the 7th, but well over 100 years before then.
And speaking of history, your personal history, let's talk about your journey, because it's been quite the journey. A Holocaust survivor, drawn to Zionism. Just explain to us where you've been over your life.
I was born as a Jewish infant in Hungary 2 months before the Nazis occupied that country, which is when the genocide of Hungarian Jews began. And by the time I was 5 months of age, the Nazis, with their collaborators, had shipped close to 500,000 Hungarian Jews to the death camps, mostly Auschwitz, including my grandparents. And my mother and I nearly became two of that number. And then I spent the first year under Nazi occupation with vicious anti-Semitic regime in power in Hungary. We barely survived. Then after the war, I grew up, even in communist Hungary, although the official policy was to forbid racism, but there was kind of an endemic Eastern European anti-Semitism that I grew up with. I was bullied for being Jewish, I was insulted, all kinds of experiences. There's an American black psychologist who talks about the assaulted sense of self, which is where the assaulted person takes on the view of themselves that the perpetrator has of them. And this is typical. Malcolm X talked about this, about who taught you to hate the shape of your lips and who taught you to hate the color of your hair or the curliness of your hair. Because a lot of black Americans, under the racist legacy of slavery, grew up ashamed of the manifestations of their blackness. And they had to overcome that. That affects all minorities under oppression and discriminated against. So I had that assaulted sense of self. Zionism, when I discovered it in my adolescence, my mid-teens, was a liberation from that. Because now we could fight back. Now we have a country of our own where we have the power, where we have an army. They can't do this anymore. And a certain pride in identification with this brave new state and with the freedom to be yourself as a Jew, which is what Zionism promised. And I was very taken with it and very enthusiastic about it until I began to find out some of the realities.
So was there one particular reality? Was there almost like an epiphany, or was it a slow process that changed your relationship with it?
For me, it was a slow process. For years, I read nothing but Zionist books or history books from a Zionist perspective, and I completely absorbed it. What really tipped things for me, if I can put it that way, was the Vietnam War. Now, the Vietnam War was a case where the American superpower was bombing, napalming, dropping poison on this country far away in Asia. And the press was denying the truth, was lying about it. Now, when the '67 war, in which Israel occupied Gaza and the West Bank and the Sinai Desert, the same press was very enthusiastic about Israel. And I began to ask myself, well, why is the same media that is so falsely representing what's happening in Asia, so enthusiastic about Israel. And that's when I began to do the real research. By the end of that war, I had come to the conclusion that Israel had fomented this war as an opportunity to seize more Arab lands, which they never intended to give back. That's what I thought in '67.
Speaking of, I mean, you're talking about the press, and there are parallels with what we see now. You know, a lot of the images that come out of Gaza are what Israel wants the world to see. But do you think that people get an accurate reflection of what is happening, the trauma that is being experienced there?
Well, first of all, Israel for a long time has not allowed journalists to even enter Gaza. Period. Why would they not? Israel has killed more journalists than any other power for who knows when, and they target journalists. There are aspects of the Israeli press which for the most part is very chauvinistic and very venal, but there are parts of it that do represent the truth, and the truth that's represented even in certain minority segments of the Israeli press is never presented in North America. So the information people get on the mainstream media is very much colored by the Israeli narrative. And the occupying power is going to have a very different point of view than the people being occupied and killed. And that point of view is given full credence. Every occasionally, they get caught out in a lie. They're lying all the time, but they're caught out in a lie, for example, with these medical workers that were killed. Then it turns out they were shot point blank, as was reported by the Israeli press in Haaretz, and is documented by videos. Oh, we made a mistake. I've been to the West Bank a number of times. I was in Gaza once, a few decades ago. What I saw there, I've never seen represented in the Western press, with the occasional one or two articles like every few years.
Why do you think that is? Because you talked about trauma. Do you think people have almost a limited appetite for how much trauma they want to view, even from as far away as the United States?
That would be true if they didn't talk about traumas that they don't feel implicated in. Like the Sudanese suffering, is a front page article in the New York Times just a couple of weeks ago. The Palestinian suppression and massacres, it does not make the front page anywhere in the same proportion. Look, you're from Britain. Now, if you walk around Trafalgar Square, or if you go to Westminster Abbey, where all the poets and writers, but also all the military leaders are buried and honored, what you've got is these monuments to mass murderers, people that have killed black and brown people all over the world for centuries. And these are the heroes. What I'm talking about is empire. What I'm talking about is colonialism. So it's not just a matter of people are too traumatized to look at reality. You know, what can you say about the genocide of the Jews in Europe? It was the worst mechanized crime in history. Some people will be too affected by that to look at what maybe is being now done in the name of Jews. But there's a much larger issue, which is who controls the world, who controls the media, and whose interests are being served. Winston Churchill, when there was a British, not engineered, but permitted famine in Bengal, about 3 million people died. You know what he said? He said, oh, this is a filthy people with a filthy religion. This is the colonialist attitude, that the experience of the colonized just doesn't count. And so that there's much more going on here than simply trauma and its impacts on people's consciousness, which certainly exists. But there's also a world system that has certain interests that it follows ruthlessly, and the media fall in line.
Well, I mean, speaking of trauma, and specifically generational trauma,
yeah.
How does that play into Israel's role, and how does it play into the wider scenario that we're seeing play out at the moment?
Look, there's no question about it, that the Zionist movement was a response to unspeakable Jewish trauma in Eastern Europe. And the desire to form a national state in an area that they considered themselves to be historically connected to thousands of years before. Having said that, most Jews did not go for Zionism for many, many decades. But then came the unspeakable horror of the Nazi genocide, and that gave Zionism a huge validation in a certain sense, and justification for what they're going to do, for what they're doing to the Palestinians, which is to displace them and to basically suppress them or kill them if necessary. And a lot of my fellow Jews today are so affected by the historical Jewish trauma that it simply does not allow them to look soberly at what is being done in their name. So trauma does play a role here. But I'm kind of tired of making that argument, and I'll tell you why. Even though historically there's truth in it, any colonial power does precisely what Israel is doing and has been doing. What happened here in North America, in my country, Canada? What happened in the United States? What did the British do in India? What did the British do in Kenya? What did the Belgians do in the Congo? What did the Spanish do in South America? Is mercilessly suppress, dispossess, and if necessary, in large numbers, kill the indigenous populations. So there's nothing specifically Jewish about this. It also goes along with the colonial trajectory.
How does it affect people on a human level? The people of Palestine have been experiencing trauma daily for such a long time.
Yeah.
What does that do to a population collectively as well as to individuals?
I recently wrote a foreword to a book by a Palestinian psychiatrist, Dr. Sama Jabbar, who is head of mental health services in Palestine. And she says, what do I say to a suicidal 82-year-old man who comes in with suicidal depression because the home that he built with his own hands, now, 20 years later, he's being forced to dismantle it with his own hands? Am I supposed to give him Prozac for his suicidal depression? And when I last visited Palestine, which was 2022, and I worked with Palestinian women who'd been tortured in Israeli jails. And let me tell you, the Israelis are really good at torturing people, as has been documented by Israeli Physicians for Human Rights and human rights organizations and so on. But I was told then that there's no post-traumatic stress disorder here because the trauma is never post. It's always with us. The study of Palestinian kids, a large percentage wet their beds. I wet my bed till I was 13 as a result of what happened to me as an infant. They were aggressive towards their parents. They had nightmares. And this isn't a question of individual trauma. This is collective trauma that is not even in the past. It's ongoing. In fact, it's exacerbated and it's multiplying every day.
When you're in the midst of trauma, is it possible to empathize with the other side? People of Palestine who are living in fear of bombs dropping on their heads, the trauma in Israel of people who suffered on October 7th and are still waiting for loved ones, not knowing if they will ever see them again.
Yeah.
Can the people of Palestine look to those in Israel and feel some level of empathy while they're fearing for their lives? And similarly, can the people of Israel look at what's happening in Palestine without seeming to be disloyal?